Hello, how are you? Cheers. Sláinte, as we say in Birmingham. Oh, yeah, I have just poured it. I did used to work for in a pub. It was a long time ago. Anyway, hello, thank you. Welcome back to the Maverick Diaries. I wrote these as a stream of consciousness in 1997 as a result of a new play called A Ghost of a Chance, and it was about the process of making a new play, casting it, finding a finance, all the kind of rubbish and aggravation that not many people realise goes on with theatre production, and particularly small-scale theatre production. And the idea was I would write these, and then we didn't have time to edit them and publish them, as it were, the night before, or in fact the night of the opening of A Ghost of a Chance, unedited. And I should say I'm reading these now as well, kind of cold. I haven't read them for a long time. So as you're hearing them, it's almost the first time I've heard them as well, which is why I occasionally stumble. Anywho, thank you for watching. You can subscribe and like. With 20 odd subscribers now, which I think is brilliant. I think it's 28 when I looked. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm quite flattered. I don't quite know why. I think it's theatre people that are in touch, and I know one or two people that are in these diaries are reading them as well. So thank you. I don't know why thank you, but thank you. So, you may remember the last episode finished with me in a very black mood due to a darts tournament taking place in the round room of the Billesley pub, which is where we present all our theatre. We did present all our theatre for years. I always believed that there should be a fringe producing, there should be pub theatre in Birmingham, and there wasn't. So we started it. I have to say in 2020 now there are a few pub theatres, which I'm really pleased about. Birmingham still has problems, so does Solihull, I found out quite recently, and I'm minded to go back and do something about that, but that perhaps is for another time. But right now, let's go back, you and I, to Friday, the 11th of July, 1997. Having recovered from my black mood, I awake in a sort of a grey-coloured one, but I've got to deal with it. I phone a few people to check the feasibility of moving our gala night, but it's difficult. Because of the query over the date, I think we'll lose the Lord Mayor of Birmingham. We'll see. I go back to the pub to tell Tony, the manager, that we're in trouble. I don't actually tell Tony, but I have already made up my mind that if they can't move the darts tournament elsewhere in the pub, I'm either going to cancel or find another venue altogether. Fortunately, it doesn't come to this, and I think they will move the flipping tournament downstairs. I've sort of had enough. It would actually be a better move for them to move the tournament downstairs anyway. Tony, the manager's off for 3 weeks to get married. Hooray! And I asked Paul, the assistant manager, to scribble in my diary that the round room is booked for those 5 days of our production of A Ghost of a Chance. I hope that's the end of it. But knowing how things are in a pub, I rather doubt it is. Anyway, with this little crisis averted, back to the first read-through. So I've got the two actors there. First read-through of the script of A Ghost of a Chance. And basically it was great. Paul Henry met Justin Luke Towler at the Midlands Arts Centre, the MAC, for the first time since the audition, and then we go and have a read-through of the first act. I think it's okay, but I have to confess I feel a bit out of my depth. Paul Henry, age and experience much greater than me, and Justin Luke Towler, age much younger than me, but he's done the rounds, have both, well, done much more than me. I don't think Justin has more experience of serious acting than I have, and I know he's never created a part, but I do feel a vague unease. Hearing Paul read the part of Bob for the first time is very interesting. I know I've got to change some of the dialogue, but that will be for the better. I'm also surprised by the comedy he gets out of it. I intentionally wrote a few laughs in, but there are times when we're rolling about. I hope the comedy will be a counterpoint for the more horrific bits. Humour and pathos, loves. We read the first half, had a break, and then Justin and I started to create the characters of Tim and Luke. He'll be okay, will Justin, I'm sure. But I do worry about him, or maybe I worry about me. No, I know I worry about him. I still have some reservations about how comfortable he'll be with the characters I've written and some of the situations I've written the characters into. But I think that might just be me reacting to his physical size and the debate I've had with his mom. He looks much younger than his 14 years, which is great for the show. After our chat, I wrote up the notes we've created on the characters. For your delight and delectation, I include them here. It's mainly Justin's work. If you watch A Ghost of a Chance, you can see how close we get to the characters. Justin, my old mate. Here's our notes. Tim, he's about 13. Emotionally, about 11 or 12. Less mature and grown up than you. He's happy with life, a bit philosophical and accepts what comes. Sport, not particularly sporty, but he likes to kick around. He goes to a mixed school, not a particularly good school, but not a bad one either. Uniform is black with yellow stripes. Music, he likes mainly chart stuff. He might strum the guitar, but not a posh one or a Woolworth special, a wooden one. He gets a bit annoyed sometimes with his parents. Maybe he was occasionally slapped when he was small, but if he's punished nowadays, it might be the odd grounding. He likes girls, but he isn't going out with anyone. He likes their company and likes talking to them. He has a mountain bike with loads of gears. In his spare time, he goes to a youth club and maybe plays the odd game of snooker or pool. He reads sports magazines. The Ghost. This is the other part that he has to play. The Ghost, unemotional, selfish and self-centred. Clever, but in some ways naive, as when he tries to imitate Tim during the daddy scene. He's quick on his feet, hardened to real emotion due to his long passage through life. He doesn't really care for Bob, he just wants to enjoy having a body. He has a fear of a higher being. That'll do. I send him off to Justin. Good stuff, kid. Saturday, the 12th of July. Well, the vagaries of showbiz. The press release I sent out did the trick. The Birmingham Evening Mail ran an article in today's edition, almost a whole page on Justin. The headline is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star by Carol Hassel, a great journalist who calls every couple of weeks to see if we can give her a story. I really love the local press. The Mail photographer copied some of the photos from the album Justin's mum's kept. There's pictures of Justin with Esther Ranson, Nairi Dawn Porter, Colin Baker, Kim Wilde and Darren Day. The main photo is a good one too. Justin on his bike looking like a real kid, which of course he is. When I say real, I mean it's not a showbizy picture, it's natural. His bike looks pretty good too. I've got a bike and it usually gets an outing 2 or 3 times a year. I write to Justin and start the letter with, "Your bike looks cool." Slater, as sensitive as ever, reads the letter and comments, "You patronising bastard." But I mean it, his bike does look cool. I bill and coo a bit over the article like some sort of proud parent. I am really and genuinely pleased for Justin. I hope he doesn't get too much stick from the other kids at school over the heading of the piece. I get the impression that Justin's reaching the stage where things cool and uncool matter. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning that here. Oops, well, at least I hope he doesn't. That we had a little discussion about excluding any references to his dancing and ballet from his CV and any contacts with the press. Now, apparently, he's quite a talented dancer, and although I'm hugely impressed and realise the fitness and power needed to succeed in dance, I gather his classmates at school are less aware of the physical strength needed to do ballet and tend to concentrate more on the tutu aspect of dance. Enough said, Justin. And of course, I'm delighted with almost a full page in the Evening Mail, the biggest and most popular newspaper in Birmingham, Britain's second city. The biggest celebration in Highbury Towers, though, today is for me bird. Rebecca, having spent 5 months at Colchester, has been out of work since June. She went for an audition for a Thomas Hardy play at Luton, but didn't get it. Then her agent arranged for her to audition for a television part. She met the producer and director of a new sitcom by Roy Clark, the writer who created The Last of the Summer Wine and Keeping Up Appearances. It's his first new project since Summer Wine finished, and it's a 6-part comedy for BBC One called Spark. The offer on part is a good one, the young girlfriend of the lead character. She's in every episode, but more importantly, Rebs reads the scripts and felt it was the perfect part for her. Obviously, Rebs is delighted to get an audition, and although it's notoriously difficult to tell, take note Justin, she felt the audition went quite well. She was instantly recalled for a further audition this week, and although I didn't admit it to Rebs, I was quite excited when I heard that in addition to the director and producer, she would also be seen by Roy Clark himself and the head of BBC Light Entertainment. Now, being the partner of an actor is never an easy job. I'm fond of saying that I've never really known such a tough business that is peopled by such sensitive and generally very nice folk. And although drama schools give a good grounding in the skills of the craft, they spend no time at all on the other reality of acting, unemployment and insecurity. So I do my usual audition job on the phone to Rebs, we speak many times a day if she's in London, and tell her that the law of averages means she probably won't get the job, she shouldn't be disappointed, etc. blah blah blah. But I secretly have a good feeling about it. They must be seriously interested in her if she's been recalled with the writer and head of light entertainment. She phones me straight after the audition and tells me that she didn't think it went as well as the first read-through, but she was much more nervous this time. So nervous, in fact, that as she left, she dropped a handbag as she stood up and walked into the door on her way out. But they laughed at her acting and, you guessed it, Reb's agent, who is also confused when he called Rebecca, called her later that afternoon. The conversation went something like this. Agent: hello, Rebecca. Rebs: hello, Rebecca. Long pause. Rebs: oh, go on then. Tell me the worst. Get it over with. They don't like me, do they? I haven't got it, have I? Pause. Agent: I thought you'd think that. Well, the answer is no. Or rather, yes. They've offered you the part. 3 months filming, starting in September for the BBC, a primetime sitcom. Well done, you clever girl. Much screaming and excitement at both ends of the phone. Rebecca's agent seems perfect for her at this time. Rebecca Blonde has an office on Shaftesbury Avenue and was one of the top agents at one of the biggest agencies in the world until she went out on her own some years ago. Blondie is still quite young, and when Rebecca left drama school, she was in a very fortunate and very unusual position of having interest from 4 agents. Rebs did the rounds of all 4 before settling with Rebecca Blonde. Any relationship with an agent is a funny one. Although they're actually working for you, particularly with an actor's agent, in the early stages of a career, they need to be more than just an agent. Rebs is lucky in that Rebecca Blonde has been quite supportive and understanding of the depression and the moods that can hit an out-of-work young actor. I have never met her, although I did seek her advice about which writer's agent I should sign with, and I saw her briefly when she appeared on This Is Your Life with one of her clients. But I feel there was a softness within the steel heart of this West End agent, and her delight at Rebs being offered what could be a major part seems to me to be for far more than just commercial reasons. Rebs calls me and tells me the news, and me and Slater whoop and holler. I do a little dance. It's the relief, I think. After years of starving, this could be Rebecca's big break. It's also a little bit of comfort for me in the situation. I've always accepted that what we're both doing in different ways is a gamble. Do you settle for a steady job with the resulting steady income, or do you suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? No money, very little social life, no holidays, dealing with debt, etc., in the hope that one day your fortunes may turn. I hope Reb's fortunes may have turned, or at worst it means she has 3 months good work for the rest of the year. She returns to Birmingham and we celebrate in style by going to Giovanni's in King's Heath. It is ludicrously expensive. Well, for us it is anyway. But we went there when we heard she'd been offered the season at Colchester. We're like a couple of little kids and we end up drinking far too much, but hey, why not? Work hard, play hard. I also tell her a little bit about what it might be like if she becomes a bit famous. I have a little bit of personal experience of this from my BR&B radio days. I came back to Birmingham from working in social work in London when I was about 22 years old. I was the youngest presenter at BR&B Radio, and at the time there was only really Radio 1 and BR&B in the West Midlands area, although Beacon had recently started in Wolverhampton, and of course there was BBC Local Radio. I was completely unprepared for the fact that my job might throw me into the public eye, even a little. The Evening Mail, bless them, ran a Local Boy Makes Good story, and there were some nice spin-offs, like Mike Hewitt writing to me. Mike Hewitt was my old English teacher from Wheelers Lane Secondary Modern. He completely reinvented my academic character in English lessons and showed me the joy of writing. Before Mike, our English teacher had been a bloke called Mr. Watkins. He was Welsh, oh, there's a surprise, a Welsh teacher in Birmingham, and we nicknamed him Dozy. I'm a great fan of the current plans to weed out bad teachers, by the way, and I'm about to share the reason for this political nugget. Dozy Watkins' idea of an English lesson was to settle the class of about 40 pubescent boys and then tell us to read 20 pages of whatever book we were studying while he went outside for a fag. As I've already said, Wheelers Lane was a pretty tough school at the time, and you can imagine how attentive we were as soon as Dozy strolled out the door. I think I might have had a natural ability in English, and my reading age was always higher than my biological age. As a result, I think, of my mother's love of books. There was always a ready and available stream of books at home. In spite of this, I never placed higher than 20th in a class of 40 in term work, and end-of-year exams were only slightly better. But then one day, when I was about 14, I was at school, and as we were preparing for Dozy to give us his usual pre-fag announcement before the English lesson, the door opened and a rather smart, dapper, well-groomed man walked in. He had dark hair and slightly chiselled features, and most of us had seen him earlier in the day because when you get a new teacher in a school of 400 boys, news travels fast. He called us to attention, and we stopped ruler flicking and throwing general insults with the sole aim of measuring a new bloke up. It's always like that with a new teacher, isn't it? The boundaries of behaviour are set quite quickly. Although we were the top stream in our year, we'd often had students on teaching practice fleeing the classroom in tears, with no thought whatsoever about the feelings of the individual involved, or ignoring the fact that this act would bring down the wrath of Batman. Oh, Batman was our nickname for our feared headmaster Roger Probert. No one messed with Batman. Good name for the next film in the series, eh? The Wrath of Batman. Copyright Nick Hennegan. Anyway, the cane was Batman's final sanction, and I caught 6 of the best on my hand once for being caught smoking. He also used to pull me up about the length of my hair, which was about the longest in school. It wasn't so much the fashion, although this was the early 70s, man. So more laziness on my part. I've never been that much of one for image. Perhaps it was because my dad, a doer but very lovely Irish Yorkshireman, would go, "Ooh, ducky," every time I looked in a mirror as a small boy. My hair was, however, one small way of beating the system without actually doing anything bad. I had the usual CND insignia on my pencil case and bag, but I think my laziness invented silent protest. Some 20 years later, when I was at my brother's club in Hall Green, I was sitting at a table deep in conversation when someone came up behind me and smacked me round the head. I looked up shocked, and standing there was a much older Roger Probert. He smiled at me and he said, "I'm pleased to see you finally got your hair cut, Hennegan." Wow, what a memory. Sometime after that, I was presenting a show on BBC WM Heartlands, and I was very pleased to have Roger Batman Probert on as a guest. He's a good man. Meanwhile, back at Wheeler's Lane, we're giving his new teacher the once over, and he looks straight back at us, a bit like a Clint Eastwood spaghetti western. We're looking for the chink in his armour. "Hi," he says. Okay, fair enough. Hi. Could be a wimp. Next thing, he picks up the chalk and writes on the board. None of us were prepared for what he wrote. He spoke as he wrote. "My name's Mike Hewitt," he said. "You can either call me Mike or Mr. Hewitt, whichever you prefer." We were gobsmacked. A teacher with a first name. A teacher with a first name that's admitting it. Mike Hewitt. He'd written it on the board. It was unheard of. Our predatory eyes clouded over with wonder and mystery. Mike was, unknown to us, a very experienced teacher and had no problems dealing with us. He later used to throw other spanners in our persecutory works by doing things like bringing his drum kit into lessons. Mike Hewitt never had a discipline problem in all the time I was at school. Although it might sound a bit old hat now, his behaviour was so extraordinary for the time that we were left reeling. All we could do was what he told us to do. For me, he was one of the most liberating people I'd ever met as a kid. And if all the teachers had been as good as him, sorry, other teachers, there were some very good ones, I'd probably be a PhD by now. Instead of Dozy telling us to read pages 33 to 53 for homework, Mike, as I now modestly allow myself to call him 25 years after the fact, Mike would write a line on the board, something like, "There was a scream, then a thud." And that was it. That was the homework. He'd say, "That's your homework. Finish the story by Thursday." I couldn't believe it. Where was the work in that? Homework. Home play would have been more appropriate. I'd hit the kitchen table in Hollyback Road with my English writing book as soon as I got home, and I'd be flying for the next 3 nights. I wrote lots of sci-fi, a major influence due to another adult, a friend of my brother's called Pete Sword. My mother would have to stop me doing my homework for English. Never mind football or bikes or hanging out, my kiddie protests would be geared around the stories I was writing. Mum would say, "Come on, Nick, time for bed." And I'd find myself saying, "Not yet, Mum, just let me write one more page." She usually gave in. I rarely got less than an A-. with Mike Hewitt, but that was not the reason I was doing the work. I was doing it because it was fun. It was as if Mike had released something in me. My class and exam position increased, and out of 40, I was never lower than third. Even deadlines came to mean very little, something I'd learn later as a proper writer. The first time I hadn't finished a story for homework, I rather sheepishly shuffled up to Mike Hewitt and made the usual excuses about not having bought my book in. I told him I'd forgotten it. Mike looked at me and he said, "Are you sure you've forgotten your book?" Now, although most kids of 13 or 14 can be good liars, and I was no exception, I just had to come clean. "No, sir, I have got my book, but I just haven't finished the story yet. Just give me another day." Maybe I appeared earnest, but I was. The story wasn't finished, and I couldn't bear to leave it. Mike, as ever, surprised me again. "Yeah, sure, Nick. Take another day." Mike Hewitt wrote to me when I first came back to Birmingham to work at BRMB Radio. It was a lovely letter. It was encouraging, positive, and in a strange way, almost proud. I guess a bit the same as when I saw the piece about Justin in the Evening Mail. I saw Mike just once when I was at BRMB. One of the boys from Wheelers Lane had won a writing competition, and as I was hosting a Saturday morning kids show called Razzmatazz, and it was my old school, Wheelers Lane, I invited the boy in for an interview and a chance to allow him to read his story. As Mike was his English teacher, he came in with the kid. After a chat, the boy started to read his award-winning story. It was called Cadet Billy, and the bit he read sounded really good. I was genuinely impressed and told the boy as much. Then Mike Hewitt surprised me once again, one last time. He said, "Well, Nick, I've got to be truthful. This isn't his story, it's yours." I was puzzled, to say the least. "You wrote this story when you were about 14. I hung on to all your old school books because I thought you might do something someday." Blimey. I hope he doesn't read this. No A pluses for this one. Like I said, I support the current campaign to weed out bad teachers.